The story begins with a reporter announcing on the news that on June 2nd, 2224, the zoo in Ning City was attacked by a snake more than 100 meters long. Experts have been unable to determine the snake's species, but several citizens captured footage of a giant, whale-like beast appearing in the sky north of the city, causing widespread commotion. Meanwhile, in front of the screen broadcasting the news, our protagonist's body lay on the floor, blood seeping from his wrists. However, he could see his own body from a detached perspective and wondered if it truly was his. His shock intensified when he caught his reflection in a mirror. He was an iguana. Panicking, he questioned whether he had somehow transformed into a sea iguana. Our protagonist, Chen Chu, is a sophomore at the University of Ning. Preferring his independence, he rents a place off campus rather than staying in the dormitories. A lover of cold-blooded animals, Chen is particularly fascinated by their vibrant colors. Recently, the local pet store had received a new batch of exotic pets, and he was immediately drawn to a sea iguana, an amphibious creature. Though sea iguanas are generally gentle, an accident occurred the moment it was let loose. The iguana bit Chen's wrist, prompting him to instinctively swing his phone, which slammed into the iguana's head. The iguana released its grip, but the phone rebounded and struck Chen's head, knocking him unconscious. When Chen awoke moments later, his vision was blurry, and he saw the iguana staring at him. As his senses returned, he noticed that when he raised his hand, the iguana mirrored the motion. Bewildered, he speculated that he could control the iguana's body as if it were an extension of his own. Excited, he wondered if this was his gold finger, a term used for cheats in video games, and mused that it might be the start of his hero's journey. Examining the iguana rolling over, he contemplated its potential abilities. Should he live-stream the intelligent lizard to gain fame, or use it to gather abalone and sea cucumbers for profit? Picking up the iguana, he resignedly thought that he wasn't destined to be a grand protagonist. When others acquired cheats, they became powerful villains or universal gods, but he was stuck with a little lizard. The iguana's stomach growled loudly, and Chen realized he felt the same hunger. He figured he must have been unconscious for an entire day. Wondering what sea iguanas ate, he told the creature it should be fine with meat, since it was a lizard. He prepared a meal, chopping vegetables and cooking steak, then proudly presented the dish to the iguana. To his surprise, the creature eagerly devoured the steak, confirming that sea iguanas could indeed eat meat. Suddenly, a system interface appeared before him. It indicated that after eating, his clone had gained 5 evolution points, and his own constitution had increased by 0.5. Confused yet intrigued, he examined the status window displayed by the system. It revealed his level was 0, his constitution was 8.5, and his spirit was 12. His talent was mind control, while his external aura and QI perception were both at 0. His skills included extremities boxing, stepping cloud jump, and springing leg. The iguana, listed as his clone, had 0 evolution levels and 5 evolution points. Staring at the screen, Chen marveled, wondering if this was his actual cheat. He raised his hand and stared at it, recalling a memory from childhood. His father had once told him that practicing forms without understanding their foundations was meaningless. His father had explained that force originated in the legs, passed through the abdomen, and took shape in the fingers. Chen had pleaded to rest after standing on piles for too long, but his father refused, calling him cowardly for giving up halfway. Despite his trembling body, young Chen had shouted his defiance, refusing to be a coward, and ran as his father urged him to go faster. Eventually, he tripped on a stone, falling hard. Gasping for breath, he lay still, but his father had glared and ordered him to rise, reminding him that no one else would help him in adulthood. Years later, Chen's father handed him a box containing their savings, instructing him to take a long journey on his own. His father reminded him never to neglect martial arts training, promising that when Chen became strong enough, he would see the other side of the world. With tears in his eyes, Chen had asked how he could find his father again. His father, standing tall, replied that once Chen became a grandmaster, he might no longer be around, and then walked out, closing the door behind him without looking back. A decade passed in the blink of an eye. The iguana burped, full from its meal, surprising Chen with how fast it ate. Observing it closely, he wondered if it had grown longer. The system confirmed his suspicion. The iguana's evolution points had risen to 15 out of 200. Reflecting on the changes, he noticed his own reflection in a mirror. Lifting his shirt, he saw defined abs, something he hadn't had before. Realizing that the iguana's evolution points also enhanced his own body, Chen became excited. He imagined the iguana evolving into a behemoth from his dreams and envisioned himself becoming a true martial arts grandmaster. Later, at the marketplace, the cashier informed Chen that the 10 pounds of boneless prime beef and 20 pounds of lean pork were all packed. He asked if he would pay with cash or a QR code. He replied with QR code and scanned his cell phone at the payment device. After completing the transaction, Chen left the marketplace, headed to the parking lot, and loaded the groceries into his car. Satisfied that it was enough, he closed the trunk and drove away. Minutes later, he arrived home and placed the final dish he had cooked on the table. Presenting it to the iguana, he thought to himself that the more the iguana ate, the closer he would be to achieving his dream of becoming a martial arts master. The iguana, amazed by the spread, eagerly devoured the food. Because of their shared connection, Chen also experienced the flavors the iguana tasted. He discovered that, to the lizard's palate, pork wasn't as good as beef. Opening his eyes, he stretched and muttered that the beef could use a bit more cumin. He resolved to add more seasoning next time. The iguana, now full, walked over to the window and lay down to rest. Later, in the martial arts room, Chen positioned himself near the punching bag. He launched a punch with full force, and the system displayed a notification his extremities boxing experience had increased by 5 points. Impressed, he noticed that his constitution had improved, and that his training progress was faster than ever before. 2 days later, he was back in the martial arts room, catching his breath after hours of intense training. Wiping sweat from his face, he reflected on how incredible it felt to grow stronger through sheer effort. Determined to push further, he drew his leg back and delivered a powerful kick to the punching bag, snapping its chain. Checking his status window, he saw that his constitution had risen to 28, his spirit to 16, and his external aura and QI perception had increased by 10 each. The iguana's evolution points had also climbed to 195 out of 200. From the perspective of traditional martial arts, Chen realized he had reached the peak of the Ming realm. He recalled his father explaining the hierarchy of martial arts realms: Ming, Dark, and Transformation. At the peak of the Ming realm, one could take on 10 opponents at once. The Dark realm marked a first-rate expert capable of fighting 100 foes, and was often associated with legendary families. The Transformation realm, rarely seen in modern times, represented an unbreakable body and the ability to defeat 1,000 enemies, a feat described only in ancient texts. Excitedly, young Chen had once asked his father which realm he had reached. His father admitted he had briefly entered the Dark realm. Before his father could elaborate, Chen interrupted, declaring how amazing it was, and asking if his father came from a legendary family. Annoyed, his father had simply replied that he was from Luotuan. Later that day, Chen stepped out of the martial arts room and was astonished to see how much the iguana had grown. Smiling, he told it that one more meal would be enough for its evolution and hoped it wouldn't disappoint. After feeding the iguana, he felt and tasted the meal through their connection. As the evolution points climbed slowly from 197 to 199, his anticipation grew. Finally, the iguana reached 200 evolution points, and the system announced that it had met the requirements to evolve. The evolution began, and both Chen and the iguana experienced a surge of intense pain. A sharp spikes erupted from the iguana's back, and the agony sent it thrashing wildly around the room, leaving a trail of destruction. Chen screamed in unison with the creature as the process unfolded. Moments later, Chen lay on the floor, panting and questioning what had just happened. He glanced at the iguana beside him and stood up in awe. The iguana had evolved, growing significantly larger. Curious about its newfound strength, Chen commanded it to strike a punching bag, which it demolished with a single swipe of its tail. Amazed, Chen checked his status and discovered that his constitution, spirit, external aura, and QI perception had all doubled. He realized that each time the clone evolved, his own physical attributes also multiplied. While unsure if the increases were due to his current strength being relatively low, or if this pattern would persist, he found the implications exhilarating. If the doubling effect continued, his growth would either be steady or terrifyingly rapid. Releasing his aura, Chen assessed his progress. By traditional martial arts standards, he had just entered the Dark realm, granting him the ability to unleash external energy. The realization that he was now a legitimate martial arts expert left him astounded. However, he knew that daily training experience gains were capped at 100 points. Looking at the iguana, he surmised that further enhancing his body would rely heavily on its growth. To his surprise, the iguana also released its external energy, locking eyes with him, as if aware of its shared power. Suddenly, a loud knock on the door broke his focus. Approaching the door, he heard an angry voice outside. When he opened it, a huge man stood there, pounding on the door in frustration. However, as soon as the man saw Chen's imposing aura, his confidence wavered. Trembling, the man stammered, explaining that there had been a lot of noise lately and asking if the place was under renovation. Chen apologized, explaining that he had been training and hadn't realized it was so loud. The man, skeptical about training that sounded like an earthquake, peeked into the room and was shocked by the mess. Shaken, he respectfully requested Chen to train more quietly. Chen assured him he would adjust his methods and apologized again. As the man stepped into the elevator, he thanked Chen for understanding. Just before the doors closed, the iguana poked its head out and stuck its tongue out mockingly at the man, who, despite his earlier arrogance, had been reduced to a cowardly wreck. Chen closed the apartment door and turned to stare at the iguana. Its large size made it clear that keeping it indoors was no longer practical. Realizing it was time to release the sea iguana clone into the ocean, he made his preparations. A short while later, he arrived at the shore and parked his car nearby. Determined, he stepped out with the iguana in tow. Closing his eyes, he entered the iguana's body and dove into the water. Activating his energy sense, he noted that his current range covered a radius of 10 meters. As he scanned the depths, he spotted a massive fish with 5 eyes and was startled by its unusual appearance. Deciding to make it his first target of the day, He positioned himself and rushed toward the fish. However, the creature dodged him, causing him to crash into a large stone. To his astonishment, the stone cracked and split in half from the impact, which also shocked the five-eyed fish. Seizing the opportunity, Chen launched another attack, successfully biting into the fish and consuming it. The system notified him that after eating the mutated fish, his clone iguana gained 10 evolution points, and his physique increased by 1. Swimming deeper, he realized that post-evolution, normal food yielded only 1 evolution point per meal, but consuming mutated fish could provide significantly more. He mused that with these strange creatures appearing in the ocean and the news of recent disturbances, the world was far from peaceful. Minutes passed as he continued hunting and devouring mutated sea creatures. Eventually, the system reminded him that his clone had reached its daily cap of 100 evolution points. Accepting the limitation, Chen decided to explore further. To human eyes, the ocean at night was cold and pitch black, but through the eyes of the sea iguana, the underwater world was vibrant and colorful. As an amphibian, the iguana could stay submerged for extended periods, though it still relied on lungs to breathe. Spotting a large stone with a hole that led to an air pocket, Chen guided the iguana there. The pocket offered a safe resting spot with access to fresh air, and Chen decided it would be a good place for the iguana to rest. Returning to his own body, Chen climbed back into his car and prepared to leave. Driving away from the shore, he soon noticed a house with a car parked in front. Puzzled, he wondered if someone actually lived there. His confusion turned to shock when he heard a scream for help coming from the house. Despite the cry, Chen kept driving, reminding himself that he needed to master his skills before taking action. Inside the house, a bald man asked another if the car outside had left. The second man confirmed it was gone, earning the bald man's praise for his attentiveness. Meanwhile, a third man struggled to restrain a tied-up woman, whose gag had fallen from her mouth. Furious, the bald man kicked the third man, berating him for his carelessness and demanding to know why he hadn't noticed the gag slipping off. The third man, clutching his shoulder in pain, protested that it was too dark when they dragged her in. The bald man crouched near the woman, clamped his hand over her mouth, and warned her to stay quiet or face dire consequences, implying the men would have their way with her if she resisted. Meanwhile, Chen had turned back toward the house, determined to investigate. Activating his energy sense, he detected 3 men inside. 2 were sitting at a table drinking, a third was eating while using a cell phone, and a woman was tied up nearby. Suspecting a case of kidnapping or human trafficking, Chen decided to handle the situation swiftly to ensure the hostage's safety. Positioning himself outside, he burst through the door with a surge of energy. The men, startled by the sudden intrusion, barely had time to react before Chen struck. His first move sent the third man flying into the wall with a powerful kick to the stomach. The bald man lunged at him with a knife, but Chen intercepted him with a sharp elbow to the chest, causing the man to scream in pain and collapse. As the bald man staggered, the second man caught and supported him, urging him to recover. Turning his attention to Chen, the second man introduced himself as Ning Fu, a practitioner of Yu Wang Fist. With a smug demeanor, he asked for Chen's name and style. Chen replied calmly, identifying himself as Chen Shu, a Luo Tuan 8 extremities boxing practitioner. Yu launched his fist at Chen, but Chen intercepted it with his hand, pulling Yu closer, attempting to kick him in the face. However, Yu stopped his kick and countered by landing a punch to his face. Before Chen hit the ground, he managed to stamp his foot hard against it, regaining his balance and immediately standing back up, much to Yu's shock. Chen retaliated with his Iron Mountain Slam technique, sending Yu flying and crashing onto the ground with tremendous force. Yu coughed in pain but grinned, declaring that the fight was getting interesting. He rose to his feet, commenting that he hadn't expected to encounter a true disciple of Luo Tuan 8 extremities boxing after coming down from the mountain. He acknowledged that the Iron Mountain Slam was indeed a signature move worthy of its reputation. Chen, however, replied that it was a shame. This prompted Yu to ask what he meant. Chen clarified that it was disappointing to see a practitioner of Yu Wang Fist, a reputable style, resorting to a crooked path. As Chen approached, Yu was taken aback by his words, accusing Chen of being high and mighty for someone who was merely a student. Yu argued that once he left the mountain and entered the real world, he realized he had to do whatever it took to get ahead. Enraged, Yu lunged at Chen, aiming 2 fingers directly at his eyes. Chen reacted swiftly, landing a powerful kick that sent Yu spinning through the air before slamming face first into the ground. As Yu collapsed, Chen stood up, exhausted. Staring at Yu, he reflected on the intensity of their fight and the dangers of battling skilled martial artists. The pressure from Yu was far greater than any he had faced from ordinary strongmen. Examining his trembling hand, Chen lamented his lack of control over his strength. He realized this deficiency could jeopardize his ability to protect others and resolved to practice refining his skills. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. Turning around, Chen saw the hostage trying to call out to him. He quickly untied her, and she threw her arms around him, crying in fear. He comforted her, assuring her that she was safe now. The woman repeatedly thanked him for rescuing her. Handing her his phone, Chen instructed her to wipe her tears and call the police after he left. He then asked for her help, by not revealing anything about him to the authorities. Surprised, she nodded and promised to keep his identity a secret. 10 minutes later, the police arrived at the house, barging inside with guns drawn and shields raised, ordering everyone to freeze. The chief officer was shocked to find the 3 men incapacitated and the hostage alone. A moment later, Guan Qing, an officer from the security agency, approached the deputy chief with a report. She explained that clear footprints were found on the broken door. Based on the depth and the damage to the door's axle, it was determined that someone had kicked the door open with a force of at least 1,000 kilograms, sending it flying 3 meters. The deputy chief reviewed photos of Yu and the other 2 men. He noted that 2 of them had died instantly, while the third had fallen into a vegetative state due to a severe concussion. Guan added that the hostage, Ling Rongya, claimed the rescuer wore a mask and that she couldn't identify him. The deputy chief frowned, wondering aloud how such force was possible. He remarked that even the king of boxing could exert only 800 kilograms in training, and such strength was unheard of in real-life combat. Guan agreed, noting that the mysterious individual's abilities were beyond human, especially considering the strange events occurring lately. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud clap of thunder, prompting the deputy chief to mutter that a storm was coming. The next night, near the shore, Chen stood atop a cliff, observing 3 men below. The first man turned to their leader, questioning if it wasn't wasteful to have just earned money and already spent $1 million on a woman from Bald Tiger. The second man agreed, pointing out that it had taken them so long to recover a sunken ship, and they had only made a little over $2 million. The boss dismissed their concerns, calling them short-sighted. He asked if they even knew who the woman was, hinting that having her would make money a non-issue. Hearing this, the 2 men grew excited and asked if he was serious. The boss turned to one of them, nicknamed 4 Eyes, and asked if he had handled their business arrangements. 4 Eyes assured him everything was set. He had arranged a shipping company, rented a high-end office building, and even hired the most attractive candidates for secretarial and front desk positions to meet the boss's standards. The boss then revealed his underwater breathing ability, boasting that as long as they found the locations of sunken ships, they could recover treasures and amass unlimited wealth. He assured them that they would never go hungry as long as they followed him. Their conversation was interrupted by rustling in the nearby bushes. Startled, the boss shouted in panic, demanding to know who was there. Chen stepped out of the shadows, addressing the group with a remark about how they stood out even among perverts. The boss, enraged, drew a knife and shouted a threat, accusing Chen of overstepping his bounds and declaring that people like him didn't last long. The boss charged forward aggressively, but Chen calmly lifted 1 foot and stomped the ground with such force that it shattered into pieces, causing the boss to lose balance. Chen used the moment to his advantage, closing the distance at high speed. With precision, he slapped the knife out of the boss's hand, followed by a powerful kick that sent the boss crashing into a tree. The bald man expressed disbelief, insisting it was impossible given their boss's enhanced strength and speed after gaining his superpower. He added that the boss had been capable of fighting multiple opponents with ease. 4 Eyes, however, shouted a warning, urging them to run. Before either could escape, Chen appeared behind them, striking them both with enough force to knock them unconscious instantly. The boss, still on the ground, demanded to know what Chen was doing. Ignoring the question, Chen commanded the boss to look at him, using his mind control ability as a test. Under hypnosis, the boss revealed his name as Zhang Changzhou, identifying himself as a ship owner and smuggler. Zhang explained that he had gained the ability to breathe underwater a month ago and had been raiding sunken ships for treasure, which he sold to wealthy clients. Satisfied with the results of his mind control, Chen deactivated it, allowing Zhang to regain his senses. Zhang, now in pain, asked what had happened to his hand. Chen replied that Zhang must have broken it accidentally, and Zhang, influenced by lingering effects of the mind control, agreed and addressed Chen as his boss. Realizing that his mind control could also alter judgment, Chen ordered Zhang to rest on his boat, promising to join him after reviving the 2 unconscious men. Zhang complied immediately. Chen noted that Zhang's ship and connections with wealthy individuals could prove useful for funding his endeavors, particularly in supporting his iguana. He then tested his mind control ability on the 2 men, finding it even easier to manipulate them compared to Zhang. This led him to conclude that his power was especially effective against weak-minded individuals. Later, Chen arrived at Zhang's ship. A crew member asked Zhang about Chen's identity, and Zhang introduced him as the new boss, instructing the crew to treat him with respect. The crew member, startled, greeted Chen nervously. Zhang ordered the crew to prepare a contract for transferring ownership of the ship, and within minutes, the Yuan fishing vessel transfer agreement was presented to Chen. Chen instructed the crew to meet him at the office the following day, and told Zhang to accompany him to the hospital for treatment, to which Zhang readily agreed. The next day, Chen controlled his iguana clone, which was eating in the ocean. He reflected on how the sea was a haven of limitless resources for the iguana. Afterward, he returned to his own body and focused on training, knowing he couldn't rely solely on the iguana to increase his power. While punching a training bag, he noted that after 2 significant battles, his control over his strength had noticeably improved. Meanwhile, his iguana, rampaging inside a mountain cave, had digested absorbed energy, increasing its evolution points by 6. By the following morning, Chen stood outside a large building, thinking about the completed ship transfer process. Having stayed indoors for a day, he had managed to accumulate over 90 evolution points, and the iguana's body had grown by 20 centimeters. This progress made him consider initiating the iguana's journey to the deep sea. He also acknowledged that he wasn't the only person in the world with superpowers, and that growing stronger was imperative, especially with the presence of unknown creatures lurking in the ocean depths. Later on the ship, the bald man mentioned to Four Eyes that the fish population seemed to have dwindled recently, leaving their nets mostly empty. He speculated that a school of large fish, possibly sharks, might be in the area. Four Eyes responded that sharks often move in groups, and even killer whales tread cautiously around them. Meanwhile, beneath the sea, a group of sharks surrounded an orca whale, attempting to feast on it. One of the sharks noticed the iguana approaching and opened its jaws to swallow it whole. However, the iguana willingly let itself be consumed. Once inside, the iguana used its sharp claws and strikes to kill the shark from within. Emerging victorious, it began devouring the shark, causing the remaining sharks to flee in fear. The system then notified Chen that the iguana had gained 10 evolution points. He also tasted the shark's meat through the connection and found it exceptionally tender. Moments later, the system displayed a notification that the iguana had met the requirements for evolution and asked if he wanted to proceed. Amazed at having the choice, Chen controlled the iguana to return to its cave to begin the process. As the evolution commenced, sharp pain coursed through the iguana's body, and Chen felt the same agony in his original body. Kneeling on the floor in pain, he watched as the system showed his updated status level 1, with a constitution of 130, spirit of 38, external aura of 280, and QI perception of 280. The iguana had evolved into a scale-armored spiny lizard, a newly born ferocious beast with potential to evolve into a ferocious beast lord, and the newly acquired water affinity ability. After several minutes, the evolution concluded, leaving Chen exhausted but thrilled with his breakthrough. His constitution was now 13 times that of a normal person, placing him at a level comparable to great success in the dark realm of ancient martial arts. However, he noted that his constitution hadn't doubled as it had in the previous evolution. Reflecting on this, he reasoned that the earlier doubling might have been due to his low base stats at the time. He then wondered what having water affinity truly entailed. Entering the iguana's body, Chen marveled at the transformation. The iguana had grown significantly larger, with bone density several times greater than before, and a weight of 4 to 5 tons. Its strength had doubled, and its steel-like claws were far more explosive. Testing its abilities, he found that it could now swim at speeds of up to 70 kilometers per hour faster than a large ship. Additionally, it moved through the water with minimal noise and resistance, which he attributed to the newly acquired water affinity. After assessing the iguana's capabilities, Chen called his secretary to inquire whether anyone had recently sought treasures. The secretary reported that there were no inquiries but mentioned that their team had identified potential locations for sunken ships. However, without Zhang, who could breathe underwater, exploring these sites might be challenging. Chen assured the secretary that they would manage and ended the call. Chen considered that while the shallow water routes used by Z country in the past, along with the major commercial waterways of H country and our country, had been mostly explored, the deep sea still held numerous undiscovered treasures. Controlling the iguana, he directed it to swim southeast, heading 25 kilometers offshore into the Yellow Sea. He discovered that after the evolution, the iguana could now breathe at greater depths. Its enhanced perception also allowed it to sense its surroundings up to 20 kilometers. After exploring the sea, Chen returned to his original body, stretching as he reflected on the purpose of raising a clone to enjoy life more fully. Checking his phone, he noted that it was nearly 11 o'clock. Deciding to reward himself for the day's progress, he resolved to get some food as a treat. After finishing his meal, he walked along the pedestrian street with a smile, reflecting on how enjoyable it was. However, he couldn't believe that a single meal had cost over 3,000 when his savings were only 20,000. Despite this, he consoled himself with the thought that he would soon take over Zhang's company and, at the very least, had experienced what it felt like to live as a rich person. As he walked, he stopped abruptly when he noticed 2 men approaching a woman leaning against a streetlight. Without hesitation, he shouted at them, asking what they were looking at and ordering them to get lost. Deep down, he knew that with his growing strength, his passion for martial arts was reigniting. As long as there was no serious danger, he didn't mind stepping in. One of the men brandished a knife and shouted back, demanding to know what he had just said. The second man joined in, telling him to leave immediately, claiming they would pretend they hadn't seen him. In response, he unleashed his aura, a force so powerful it exuded the presence of a beast, causing the men to falter in fear. Shocked, the second man muttered that it felt like they were being stared down by a wild animal, while the first man yelled at his friend that they should get out of there. Before they could leave, the woman laughed mockingly at the men, teasing them about being afraid and questioning if they were real men. Her taunts emboldened the pair, who decided they couldn't let a woman think they were weak. The first man charged at him, shouting to the second man that there was no reason to be scared, as he was just one guy. The second man agreed, declaring that they would take him down together and teach him a lesson for being too cocky. The first man lunged with his knife, while the second prepared to strike with his fists. Remaining calm, he raised his foot. As the first man closed in, he delivered a powerful kick that sent him flying, dragging the second man along with him. He knew he had used less than 10% of his strength. Had he gone all out, the kick could have reduced the man to a bloody pulp. Deciding to show mercy, he let them go, reasoning that while their actions were wrong, they didn't deserve death. He watched as the terrified men scrambled away, shouting that he was like a demon straight out of hell. The woman, still staggeringly drunk, approached him, laughing and praising him for being so strong. He couldn't help but wonder if she was crazy or possibly drugged. As she wrapped her arms around him and began removing her crop top, he ignored her advances and called the police, reporting that a seemingly intoxicated woman outside the Shangtang bar appeared to be in a vulnerable state. The woman, with a sweet but slurred voice, questioned why he had called the cops, asking if he didn't find her attractive or if he didn't want to take her home. A few minutes later, the police arrived and escorted the woman to their car. As she was led away, she pouted. Calling him no fun to the officers, he explained that he had called them after seeing the woman in a compromised state while out for a midnight snack. He then detailed the altercation with the two men and watched as the police drove away with the woman. Now that the situation was resolved, he decided it was time to shift his focus back to his main task. Taking control of the giant lizard, he prepared to continue searching for the sunken ship. Hours later, he was controlling the iguana and confirmed that the information he had found online was accurate. There really was a sunken ship in the area. He realized that his energy sense currently only extended to about 20 meters, which meant he would need to continue improving it. As he swam closer to the wreck, he was amazed to discover solid gold bars scattered within. Without wasting time, he called Four Eyes and ordered him to steer the ship toward the location. Four Eyes promptly acknowledged the command. As the crew on the ship prepared for action, Four Eyes turned to Black Ghost and asked if anyone else in the boss's team could breathe underwater besides Zhang. Black Ghost, however, curtly told him to stop asking questions and not to pry into the boss's secrets. Once the preparations were complete, the crew lowered a recovery basket into the water. He quickly loaded the solid gold bars into the basket. After securing all of them, he signaled the crew to start hoisting the loot back on board. As the basket was being pulled up, he noticed a piece of unusual metal. It was incredibly tough. His claws, which could easily tear through regular metal, barely left a scratch on it. Suspecting that the material was a special alloy, he decided to take it back for further study. Four Eyes then reported that the gold bars had been successfully retrieved and that the ship was heading back. Grabbing the strange metal, he began swimming away when suddenly a large white beast lunged at him and bit down. The creature tried to devour him, leading him to question if it had ambushed him and who it thought it was dealing with. Though the beast was longer and larger, he knew that when it came to strength, offense, and defense, it was no match for him. A brief struggle ensued, and moments later he swam away victorious, holding the metal in his grasp. Thinking to himself that the sashimi tasted quite good. A few hours later, he arrived at the shore, reflecting on how the reefs there had been eroded by seawater for years, making them incredibly hard. He decided that the deserted beach at night was the perfect place to test his strength. Standing before a massive reef, he delivered a punch, fully aware that force worked both ways. However, his bone density was nearly 20 times that of an average human, and with his external shield absorbing most of the impact, his hand only felt slightly sore. His body's rapid recovery ability healed even that minor discomfort almost instantly. He repeatedly punched the reef, using the session to train. As he practiced, he mused about his evolution, estimating that his physique had surpassed 200. Though untested, he believed his punches now carried a force of at least 3,000 pounds, or 1.5 tons. With his external energy boost and his mastery of the 8 extremities boxing technique, he was certain he could punch straight through a person with ease. He then delivered a final, powerful blow to the reef, causing it to shatter into pieces. Hours later, he lay on the sand, exhausted but satisfied. He knew his punching bag at home wasn't durable enough for his current strength, and he couldn't risk training at the park. Modern technology made it far too easy for someone to record him and post it online, which would lead to trouble if his extraordinary abilities were discovered. The empty beach was the only place he could train freely. He looked at his hands, noticing how quickly they had healed. Less than a minute had passed since he stopped, and the scrapes were already gone thanks to his remarkable recovery ability. Sitting up, he saw the iguana approaching, carrying the piece of metal in its mouth. Examining it closely, he noted that the irregular black ore had a metallic luster but appeared unremarkable at first glance. However, when he tried to lift it, he struggled, estimating it weighed close to 200 pounds. Its heaviness and toughness were undeniable, so much so that even the iguana's claws had difficulty scratching it. Recognizing its potential, he decided the metal would be perfect for crafting a weapon. However, he admitted that with his current skills, creating something suitable would be a challenge. For now, he resolved to focus on dealing with the gold bars first. A moment later, He arrived at the ship and asked Black Ghost where the loot was. Black Ghost replied that everything was on board and had been cleaned up. He then headed to the captain's cabin, where the solid gold bars were stored. Black Ghost, visibly excited, asked him how much the gold bars were worth and admitted that he had never seen so many in his life. He calmly responded that the bars bore no markings, indicating they were privately minted and therefore couldn't be sold as antiques. Later, in the bustling downtown area, he entered a shop. The receptionist greeted him warmly and asked how she could assist. He inquired whether they bought gold, to which she replied affirmatively and asked if he was selling rings or necklaces. Without a word, he opened his bag to reveal the gold bars, replying that he wanted to sell them. The receptionist, visibly startled, remarked on the substantial quantity of gold and invited him upstairs to meet their manager. Following her, he met the manager, who introduced himself and asked for his name and the amount of gold he intended to sell. He introduced himself simply as Chen and gestured toward the bag, saying he wanted to sell all of it. The manager inspected the contents and informed Chen that his team would need to verify the gold's quality. He was asked to wait for a moment. Seated in a nearby chair, he watched as the team meticulously examined the gold bars. A short while later, the manager returned and informed him that the total weight of the gold was 11,250 grams. However, because the gold was not very pure and was privately minted, the shop could only offer 400 yuan per gram. The manager asked if this arrangement was acceptable, to which Chen agreed. Moments later, he left the shop with 4,500,000 yuan deposited into his account. Driving away, he reflected on how surreal it felt people his age were still struggling through college, yet he had made millions from a single adventure. Deciding it was time to upgrade his car, he drove to a luxury auto showroom. His current car had a low chassis that performed poorly on the rough coastal roads. At the showroom, he began browsing for his new vehicle when two other people entered, catching his attention. Spotting the woman, he wondered if she was his ex. Memories flooded back. He had spent a fortune trying to win her over, but she had pursued wealth and status, choosing to mingle with the rich. The woman turned to the man beside her and remarked loudly, "That's the loser who used to chase me." The rich man sneered and asked, "What's a broke college kid like you doing in a luxury car showroom?" Before Chen could respond, Black Ghost angrily retorted, demanding to know who the rich man was calling broke. Chen, however, stopped him and told him not to pay them any mind. The rich man scoffed and said, "Why? We're just telling the truth. Isn't this guy just a broke college student?" He added that this wasn't a place Chen could afford. The woman chimed in, urging the rich man not to waste time on him and to focus on the cars. Shortly afterward, the woman pointed at a red car and told the rich man she wanted it. He replied that he would check it out for her, though inwardly he was calculating his finances. With only a few tens of thousands in monthly spending money, he wondered how he could actually buy her a luxury car. For him, money was meant to impress women, but this seemed beyond his means. Meanwhile, Chen was examining a white car. It had a high chassis and ample cargo space, perfectly suited to his needs. Turning to the salesperson, he declared, "I'll take this white car, and I'll pay by card." The salesperson informed him that the car cost 2.38 million yuan and asked if he would be paying by card or in full. Without hesitation, Chen replied that he would be paying in full. His ex couldn't believe that he was paying by card for the luxury car, especially since it cost 2.38 million yuan. The rich boy, or rather, the pretending rich boy, tried to reassure her by saying that Chen was faking it, because there was no way he had that amount in his account. The woman agreed, recalling how Chen could barely afford instant noodles for weeks back then, just to impress her. Together, they mockingly suggested that Chen was just a broke student pretending to buy a luxury car. The rich boy added that there was no need for Chen to put on a show, as it would be embarrassing when his card inevitably got declined. Black Ghost questioned the rich boy, asking what he would do if Chen could actually afford the car. The rich boy arrogantly responded that if Chen could afford it, he would call Chen dad on the spot, but if Chen couldn't, then Chen should call him dad instead. Black Ghost immediately agreed to the terms. The woman teasingly suggested that Chen was bluffing, acting as if he could afford the car. Moments later, the saleswoman returned with the car key and Chen's card, congratulating him on his purchase and confirming that the car was now his. Chen thanked her without fanfare, while Black Ghost turned to the rich boy and the woman, clearly pleased. The rich boy was stunned, unable to believe that Chen had actually bought the car, and the woman started to wonder how Chen had become so wealthy. Black Ghost grabbed the rich boy, reminding him of his promise and asking if he wasn't going to keep his word and call Chen dad. The rich boy, now speechless and red with embarrassment, froze. Chen told Black Ghost not to waste time on people like them. As they walked away, Black Ghost loudly remarked that Chen was too kind and that, if it were up to him, Neither the rich boy nor the woman would leave without saying "Dad." The rich boy and Chen's ex stood in silence, unable to respond. As Chen drove away in his new car, his ex ran after him, shouting for him to listen to her and to give her a chance to explain. Inside the showroom, the saleswoman whispered to her colleague that the woman had thought she found a rich man, but ended up missing out on someone with real potential. Her colleague agreed, commenting that people often only regret their choices after losing something valuable. Later, at Cloud's Edge, the most prestigious fine dining restaurant in N City, Chen and Black Ghost arrived and were greeted warmly by the staff. They were guided to a VIP room, where the waitress asked for their order. Chen requested several high-end dishes, including a 5,888 yuan Boston lobster and a 7,888 yuan king crab, among others. As the meal was served, Chen began eating and reflected that, although the food was expensive, it was worth it. The flavors were exceptional. Meanwhile, attendants in elegant and revealing outfits served him, feeding him directly. He leaned back, thinking that after spending so much time cooking meals for his iguana, he deserved to enjoy some luxury for himself. While savoring the meal, his phone buzzed. Checking the classroom chat group, he saw an announcement from their advisor. The message reminded everyone that classes were starting in a week and instructed students to report on time. Chen considered his status window and realized that once classes began, he would have far less free time. This made it clear that he needed to earn more money quickly to help his iguana break through to the shadow realm. Swordfish are among the fastest swimmers in the ocean, capable of reaching speeds of up to 60 miles per hour, approximately 90 kilometers per hour. However, his iguana was now even faster. After consuming a sailfish, he thought about how delicious it was. Once full, he resumed his treasure hunting. By extending his senses, he could detect objects dozens of kilometers away, but despite scanning the seabed, he hadn't discovered any shipwrecks. Days passed without results, leaving him contemplative. He reflected on the world's strange changes, wondering if secret supernatural organizations existed, potentially run by governments. Regardless, he resolved to be even more cautious now that he possessed such extraordinary abilities. The next day, he arrived at a high-end office building in N City. Since Zhang had taken charge of the company, he hadn't visited it even once. Observing the bustling area, he noticed that Zhang had gone all out to make the company impressive. Entering the Tianlin Marine Industries building, the receptionist immediately recognized Black Ghost, who addressed her by name Ning Nixin and instructed her to gather everyone in the boss's office. She promptly agreed. A short while later, in the boss's office, Black Ghost gestured toward him, introducing him as the boss of their company. The employees greeted him warmly, with some noting how young, handsome, and wealthy he appeared. Ning Nixin thought he seemed exceptionally capable. Black Ghost then introduced Ning Nixin as their receptionist and Su Lenjiu as his secretary. Lenjiu approached, carefully holding his coffee, but he casually told her to place it on the table. As he assessed the office, he thought that, despite being a shell company, it was surprisingly well equipped. Maintaining it cost hundreds of thousands each month, reinforcing his need to find more shipwrecked treasures. Calling Black Ghost, whose real name was Zhang Shu, he formally ended the introductory meeting and directed everyone to return to work. He instructed Shu to head back to the ship and monitor operations, to which Xu agreed. While the mind control effect seemed stable for now, he understood that subconscious hypnosis wasn't foolproof. To avoid complications, he resolved to limit their interactions with the outside world. Later, he stood by the window, sipping his coffee as his constitution points slowly increased. The thought of using clones to hunt while passively growing stronger felt exhilarating. Meanwhile, the iguana pursued a fish, slashing a barracuda with its sharp claws. He noted the fish's size. It was 4 or 5 meters long, far larger than the typical 2-meter barracuda. Its speed was incredible, and its steel-like teeth would have been dangerous if not for the iguana's strong external force field. The growing number of fierce, mutated fish in the ocean was becoming evident. The iguana began consuming the barracuda. Tasting it himself, he immediately noticed its meat was different, providing much more energy than usual. His system displayed that the iguana's effort had earned 90 evolution points, increasing his constitution by 9 points. Something about the barracuda felt off. It was clearly no ordinary fish. His muscles and bones were enhancing far more than before, the increase nearly tenfold. He lamented the vastness of the ocean, where such a mutated barracuda seemed to be a rare find, possibly one of a kind. In the Tianlin Marine Industries office, Nixin asked Lenjiu if she thought their boss had a significant other. Lenjiu responded with a question of her own, asking why Nixin was curious and if she was planning to make a move. Another woman teased Nixin, asking if she was fangirling again. They were all startled when he unexpectedly entered the room and asked if they weren't off work yet. Lenjiu quickly greeted him, explaining that they still had a few tasks to finish. He, on the other hand, was already aware of their conversation, as his enhanced hearing had picked up their chatter while he was still in the elevator. Choosing to avoid any awkwardness, he pretended not to have overheard. Instead, he commended their hard work and told them dinner was on him that evening. His employees were thrilled and expressed their gratitude. A short while later, they arrived at the Above the Clouds restaurant. Nyxin couldn't help but be impressed upon seeing his luxury car, worth over 2 million yuan. During dinner, when the waiter announced the bill as 48,888 yuan, he simply told them to swipe his card. Nyxin felt herself becoming enamored with him, wondering which wealthy family he belonged to, while Lenju thought he was being extravagantly generous. Regardless, they all agreed that working under such a boss promised a bright future. After the meal, he informed his team that he had something to handle later that evening, but would ensure they all got rides back. They thanked him warmly for the thoughtful gesture. Later that night, he was on the shore, punching a massive reef as the sea breeze invigorated him. The soothing air lifted his spirits as he continued his relentless training. By now, his physique had reached a level over 20 times stronger than an average person. His punches alone exceeded 2 tons in strength, and with the addition of his external force field, his power effectively doubled, nearing 5 tons per punch. However, the stronger he became, the harder it was to control his abilities. He concluded that he needed to continue training to refine his control over his growing strength. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a boat approaching the shore. Curious about why anyone would visit such a remote area so late at night, he hid near a large stone and observed. The boat docked, and a man on shore, accompanied by his men, confronted those aboard. The man on shore questioned why they still didn't trust him after so many deals together. One of the men on the boat replied that tensions were high, insisting they stick to the usual rules: money first, then the goods. He realized he was witnessing a D-grade transaction. The participants were heavily armed, so he knew he needed to be cautious. One of the men on shore shouted that the goods were top quality, and the leader of the group shook hands with his business partner to finalize the deal. After the transaction, the boss warned old QI to be careful, given how tight things had become lately. Old QI assured him that they only work through single channels, and that even if something went wrong with the goods, they wouldn't be traceable. From his hiding spot, Chen observed the exchange before springing into action. Moving with incredible speed, he leapt from a tree and kicked one man on the nape, knocking him unconscious. In the same motion, he struck old QI on the nape as well, incapacitating him. The boss of the group, startled by the sudden attack, quickly grabbed his gun. Before he could react further, Chen vanished from sight and reappeared right in front of him, delivering a devastating uppercut that neutralized him instantly. Within moments, the entire group was subdued. Surveying the scene, Chen reflected that these people had abandoned all humanity and were contributing to the spread of chaos. Eliminating them, he thought, was nothing short of a public service. Meanwhile, out at sea, Chen controlled his iguana as it swam toward the boat. With a swift strike, the iguana slashed the boat from beneath, slicing it cleanly in half. Chaos erupted as the passengers were thrown into the cold sea, frantically shouting in confusion about what had happened and whether they had collided with something massive. Struggling in the water, they caught sight of the iguana circling them. Panic spread instantly as they screamed about a monster and tried to swim away, begging for help. One man clung to the wreckage and pleaded with the boss to save him, but the boss, panicked, barked back that there was no escape. He shouted for everyone to go all out, insisting that whatever the creature was, it couldn't possibly dodge a bullet. Reloading his gun, the boss fired a shot, hitting the iguana squarely in the head. To his horror, the bullet ricocheted harmlessly off its tough hide. Trembling, he demanded to know what kind of monster it was. The iguana let out a deafening roar and attacked with incredible speed, tearing through the group in mere moments. Soon after, the iguana swam back to shore, carrying a suitcase firmly in its jaws. Later, in Chen Shu's room, the suitcase lay open, revealing stacks of cash. Counting them, Chen realized that each stack was 10,000 yuan, meaning the total amount of 3 million came to 300 stacks. He thought to himself that having physical cash in front of him felt far more tangible and satisfying than seeing numbers on a bank card. The next morning, at a cafe, 2 men noticed Su Lenju approaching Chen. Both were struck by her stunning appearance and remarked on her cold, untouchable aura. She placed a document in front of Chen with a respectful demeanor, asking him to sign it. The men were shocked, wondering if this young man could actually be her boss. Chen, unfazed, signed the document and walked past them, instructing Lenju to return to the company and notify everyone that it was meeting time. The men, still in disbelief, felt an overwhelming presence from him, steady and unmovable, like a mountain. His aura was both commanding and intimidating. A short while later, in the meeting room, Chen addressed his employees, emphasizing the importance of handling every detail meticulously. He assured them that they would be the company's heroes and promised that if the company's performance continued to rise, everyone would receive a significant bonus by year's end. As the meeting concluded, Chen received a voice message reminding him that it was the last day to register for school and that he was the only student in his class yet to complete the process. Apologizing, he replied that he would head over immediately. Before leaving, he approached Lenju, who held out his coat. He informed the team that he needed to register at school and added that, since there wasn't much work left, they could leave early for the day. He assigned Lenju to handle any company matters in his absence. Naixin, overhearing the conversation, was shocked to learn that Chen was still a student. Another employee remarked that Chen's composed demeanor made it easy to mistake him for a wealthy heir raised with perfect manners. Later, Chen arrived at the N University campus. Students were awestruck by his stylish, expensive attire and couldn't believe that he was a rich kid. They gawked at his luxury car, worth over 2 million yuan. Not long after, a video of his arrival surfaced on the university forum with the caption on the last day of new student registration, "A tall, rich, and handsome guy shows up in a car worth over 2 million. The comments section buzzed with reactions. Some recognized him, noting that he had become even more handsome over the summer. Others focused on his wealth, marveling at the fact that he was driving such an expensive car. Speculation about his family being billionaires ran rampant. One viewer, a young woman, felt a strange sense of familiarity as she watched the video. His sharp, star-like black and white eyes, radiating brilliance, seemed oddly recognizable. Surprised, she scrolled through the comments and learned that Chen wasn't a freshman, he was a sophomore in the finance department. Another comment revealed that Chen was entering his junior year, leaving her stunned to realize that they were in the same year. Meanwhile, on campus, he walked, reflecting on how quickly his body and strength were improving. However, he realized that his knowledge was limited to the 8 extremities cloud steps and the tan leg technique. To better control and harness his growing power, he needed to learn new skills. He knew he could overpower Taekwondo practitioners with a single slap, but mastering control would require persistent training. After completing his enrollment, he headed to Longteng's steel shop. There, he informed the saleslady that he wanted to place a custom order for steel around 100 tons or more. The saleslady agreed and escorted him to the VIP lounge, promising to contact their sales manager. Within minutes, the manager arrived, greeted him respectfully, and inquired about his requirements. He explained that he needed a steel pillar, 2 meters in diameter and 5 meters tall, along with several steel blocks weighing 1, 5, 10, and 20 tons each. The manager calculated that the total weight would be approximately 200 tons, estimating the cost at around 700,000 yuan, though the final price would depend on the finished product. He agreed to the terms and told them to proceed with signing the contract. The next morning, he arrived at Zhang Chengshu's makeshift dock. Zhang Shu informed him that the entire area was now his warehouse. Impressed, he praised Yi Shu for his efforts and told him he could head back as he wanted to explore the area alone. Soon after, his system notified him that his iguana had gained 8 evolution points through consistent eating, which had also improved his constitution points. While pleased with the progress, he recognized that the iguana hadn't yet reached the transformation stage and still had a long way to go. He envisioned the steel pillar, once erected in the warehouse, as his future training ground. He also noted that evolution points maxed out at 100 per day, so he needed to find another source. Compared to the giant lizard's rapid progress, he felt that his own body was improving far too slowly. Meanwhile, near the shore, Guan reported to the deputy chief about a figure known as Luo Hao, alias Big Boss Lu, from the underworld. Luo owned a bar and commanded over a dozen lackeys. Guan revealed that Luo's right hand had been nearly severed by a blunt weapon wielded with immense force, leaving it barely attached by a thread of skin. Another victim, Iron Lao Qi, had his chest crushed with such force that his organs were obliterated, killing him instantly. Guan concluded that all 3 men had been killed by a single individual in less than a minute. The deputy chief, shocked, commented on the incredible strength and speed required for such a feat and questioned who could possibly pull it off. At that moment, another officer interrupted to report that another body had been found at sea. Meanwhile, at Tianlin Marine Company, Lenju reported to him that the company had no active projects and most employees were idling or playing around. She asked if they should distribute flyers to promote their services. He replied calmly that there was no need, explaining that business was like fishing, it required patience to wait for the fish to bite. Lenju felt uneasy, worrying that despite his wealth, the company could go bankrupt without advertising. She wondered how they could attract clients without making themselves known. Just then, Naixin knocked on the door, informing him that someone had arrived to discuss a business deal. Lenju was shocked and began to wonder if someone had indeed come to deliver money, just as he had predicted. He met the man who was looking around for Zhang Changshu. Chen informed him that Zhang and his crew were all working under him now. The man, impressed, remarked on how he had managed to bring someone like Zhang Changshu to his side. Introducing himself as Wang Tianhua, the man extended a greeting. Chen reciprocated and suggested they sit down to talk. Once in the visitor room, Lenju offered to prepare some tea for them, and Chen agreed. As they settled in, Tianhua explained that he had a map of a centuries-old sunken ship worth tens of millions and asked what Chen thought of the opportunity and whether he could make it happen. Instead of answering directly, Chen asked Tianhua how he planned to split the goods once salvaged. Tianhua proposed a split where he would take 70%, leaving Chen 30%, which he noted was the standard rate even with international teams. Chen, unimpressed, told Tianhua that if that was the case, he should seek out an international team instead. Tianhua was momentarily speechless but eventually asked for Chen's suggestion. Chen responded firmly that he wanted at least a 50-50 split. Otherwise, there would be no deal. Knowing how strict the laws were regarding private salvage, Tianhua realized Chen was likely their only viable option. Reluctantly, Tianhua asked if Chen was confident he could deliver. Chen reassured him, pointing out that he had capable people under him, like Zhang Changshu, and even offered for Tianhua to come along and see for himself if he had doubts. Conceding, Tianhua agreed to the 50-50 split, shaking Chen's hand and expressing that it was a pleasure to work together. Chen echoed the sentiment. Meanwhile, in the investigation office, the deputy chief reviewed reports of unusual incidents. He was particularly puzzled by the exaggerated claw marks found at a recent crime scene. Wondering what kind of abnormal creature could leave such marks, he checked the internal dialogue system. Guan had filed a report detailing multiple deaths, including 4 at sea, suspected to have been caused by a beast attack. Later, just before sunset, Chen was aboard a ship with Lenju. She asked about the massive iron pillar they had on board. Chen explained that it was a sea calming pillar, traditionally buried at piers to stabilize the waters and hold back the sea dragon kings. Lenju was amazed at his knowledge. Meanwhile, Chen checked his account balance, noting that it was down to 321,800 yuan. He thought about how quickly money seemed to disappear. A short while later, Chen parked his car in the Bixi Garden complex. Lenju apologized again for troubling him and suggested he come upstairs for some water. He declined, stating he had other matters to attend to, and she agreed. Watching him drive away, she found herself wondering why she had been so bold to make the offer, especially when she remembered her laundry, specifically her underwear, was still lying around. As Chen drove toward the shore, he recalled how, during dinner, he had accidentally snapped his chopsticks in half. The incident reminded him of how much he still needed to practice controlling his immense strength. That night, he arrived at the shore and began training for hours. He paused to examine his hands, realizing that achieving perfect mastery over his power was essential to using it effectively. Closing his eyes, he activated his energy sense. Now capable of covering up to 30 meters, his senses allowed him to perceive even the faintest movements of the wind and grass around him. 3 days later, his iguana consumed a red-eyed fish, gaining 210 evolution points, which increased Chen's constitution by 21 points. Observing the fish, Chen realized it was mutated, much like the ones he had encountered before. Through his iguana clone, he monitored the situation and noticed Tianhua's ship slowing down, indicating they were nearing their destination. Using his original body, Chen called Tianhua to inform him that his other crew had already arrived and asked where they would begin. Tianhua praised Chen for his efficiency and told him to prepare, as the operation would start that night. Chen agreed. While waiting for Tianhua's signal, Chen sat down to train. After hard work, he noted that he had gained 15 aura control experience points. With the enhancement of his aura, his strength multiplied significantly. Later that night, Tianhua, aboard his ship, called Chen to inform him that he hadn't seen Chen's crew yet. Chen explained that they were already underwater and asked Tianhua to provide the exact location. Impressed, Tianhua described the site as 200 meters to the left of a shipwreck approximately 700 to 800 meters deep. Using the iguana's body, Chen followed the directions, though he noted that even with his enhanced constitution, the water pressure at such depths was uncomfortable. Upon reaching the location, he found nothing. Chen informed Tianhua that he had searched the area, covering a radius of 200 meters at a depth of 800 meters, but there was nothing there. Tianhua, surprised at the speed of the search, wondered aloud how Chen had managed to scan such depths in just 20 minutes. Tianhua's secretary then suggested that the ship's location might have shifted over the centuries and recommended searching about a kilometer east. Apologizing for the inconvenience, Tianhua asked Chen to investigate further. Chen agreed, swimming east and activating his energy sense to scan the area. This time, he was relieved to find the sunken ship. A moment later, Chen secured the goods in a container, and Tianhua's team hoisted it onto the ship. The onboard expert inspected the artifacts, noting that 8 pieces were broken while 3 were intact. He estimated the total value at 30 million yuan, with the potential for an additional 20 million if sold privately. Excited, Tianhua called Chen to share the news, emphasizing the significance of the find. Chen, unfazed, replied that his part was done and that the rest was up to Tianhua. He simply wanted his share of the money. A few days later, Tianhua arrived at Chen's ship and handed over his 50% share, totaling 11.5 million yuan. Tianhua mentioned that the total value exceeded 23 million yuan and invited Chen to count it if he wished. Chen declined, stating that he trusted Tianhua. Laughing, Tianhua remarked that Chen was a straightforward guy and promised to contact him the next time he had information about a sunken ship. After Tianhua departed, Chen looked at the money, satisfied that his financial issues were resolved for now. However, he recognized that his strength still wasn't sufficient for riskier ventures. He resolved to train until he could withstand sniper bullets and grenades without harm. The next day at Tianlin Marine Company, Xiao Huai reported to Chen that someone had submitted a resume the previous day. The applicant claimed he could bring in 200 fishing enthusiasts every month for a 50,000 yuan salary. Chen reviewed the resume, noting the applicant's highlight membership in a fishing association and connections with industry insiders. However, he quickly crumpled the paper and instructed Xiao Hui to reject the application, explaining that the applicant was a scammer. Nyixin, curious, asked why Chen hadn't been to the office recently. He replied that he had been working on a big project and casually made a few million yuan. Nyixin was amazed and praised him, calling him incredible. Chen reminded them that he had promised to treat everyone after the project's completion and announced that he would take them to Yunsheng Tianwai for a relaxing evening. As he walked away, Nyixin called out, declaring that he was so cool. Xiao Hui, observing the exchange, reflected on how great it was to work at Tianlin Marine Company. The job was easy, the pay was good, and their boss treated them well. She compared it to her friend's company, where even the manager had tried to hit on her. Blushing, Xiao Hui found herself wondering shyly if she would accept if her own boss ever made advances toward her. Later that night, Chen and his employees dined at Yunsheng Tianwai. While eating, Nyxin commented that she hadn't realized sea fishing could be so profitable. Xiao Hui added that just a few days of fishing had yielded millions. Chen modestly replied that they had simply been lucky to catch a bluefin tuna, a single fish worth hundreds of thousands of yuan. As they enjoyed their meal, a man approached their table and asked if he was Chen, the owner of Tianlin Marine Company. The man introduced himself as Lai Tianrui, the deputy general manager of Tianhong Group and a friend of Wang Tianhua. Chen greeted Tianrui, who explained that he wanted to organize a sea fishing trip and asked if Chen was interested in collaborating. Chen replied that as long as it was profitable, he was interested and suggested Tianrui visit Tianlin Marine Company the next day to discuss the details. Lenju approached and handed Tianrui Chen's business card. Tianrui accepted it, confirming that he would see Chen the following day. Chen agreed, and they parted ways. After Tianrui left, Xiao Hui remarked that she hadn't expected him to be so young. Nyxin asked if Tianhong Group was truly a major company, to which Xiao Hui replied that its chairman was worth tens of billions, far wealthier than the richest man in N City. Xiao Hui speculated that since Tianrui shared the chairman's surname, he was likely a relative. Nyxin was awestruck, exclaiming about Tianhong's vast wealth, while Lenju excitedly added that it was incredible to run into the son of the richest man in the region over a casual meal. Chen smiled to himself, amused that even someone as privileged as Tianru was drawn to shipwrecks. Later that night, Chen marveled as the iguana caught a bluefin tuna. He thought it was a remarkable coincidence, considering he had just told his employees about the value of a single bluefin tuna over 10 million yuan, and now not one, but two were in their possession. The iguana rushed to the warehouse and deposited the fish in an ice-filled box. Chen, aware of the fish's immense value despite its unremarkable taste, joked to the iguana that it wasn't just a fish, it was practically money swimming in the sea. The next step, he thought, was finding a buyer to sell it off. The following day, Chen was in his training room when Lenju informed him that Tianrui had been waiting at the office for some time. He replied that he would head over immediately. A short while later, he arrived at Tianlin Marine Company and met with Tianrui. Tianrui shared that he had the exact coordinates of a shipwreck. Curious, Chen asked why someone with the wealth of Tianhong Group would be interested in shipwrecks. Tianrui responded that no one ever feels they have too much money. Chen agreed with him and proposed a 50-50 split of the proceeds, which Tianrui accepted without hesitation. As their conversation continued, Chen found Tianrui fascinating. It was clear from his demeanor that Tianrui wasn't just after the treasure aboard the ship. Chen then asked if Tianrui knew anyone who owned a high-end seafood restaurant, explaining that he had a 4-meter bluefin tuna to sell. Tianrui was impressed that such a prized fish was within Chen's reach and confirmed that he knew someone who owned a seafood restaurant. Offering to help, Tianrui called his contact and suggested that they have lunch together so he could introduce Chen to the restaurant owner. Later, they arrived at the warehouse. As a man named Lin rushed inside to inspect the fish, Chen shouted for him to slow down, joking that the fish wasn't going anywhere. The man examined the bluefin tuna and declared that its quality was impeccable, with every aspect meeting a grade standards. Lin, visibly impressed, remarked that the fish was truly top-notch and offered a flat price of 7 million yuan, noting that they were all friends. Without hesitation, Chen agreed. Lenju, meanwhile, was astonished that a single fish could sell for such an astronomical amount. A few hours later, they arrived at the Marriott International. Chen told Lenju that they had a great haul today, so they should splurge a little. Lenju was amazed, knowing that Marriott International was a hub for the world's top luxury brands, the epitome of indulgence. Watching him buy numerous high-end items with ease, she couldn't help but think that her boss's money came far too easily. After spending a fortune on shopping, they returned to the dock warehouse. Lenju's gaze lingered on his watch, knowing it was worth 2 million yuan. She thought about the luxury goods he had bought for her, which were likely worth over 2 million yuan as well. Inside the warehouse, Chen mentioned that he wanted to buy a villa and asked her to keep an eye out for one. He specified that it should be big and spacious, preferably in a quieter location, as he valued peace and quiet. Adding that a villa worth around 30 million yuan would suffice, Lenju simply nodded and assured him she would handle it. Later that night, Chen, controlling the iguana, spotted 2 massive submarines in the depths. He swam away, lamenting that he wasn't yet strong enough to take on such formidable vessels, otherwise he would have torn them apart. As he continued to explore, he noticed something enormous hiding beneath a massive reef. Feeling a sense of danger, he chose to retreat, deciding there was no need to take unnecessary risks. However, as he was swimming away, a giant crab emerged from its hiding spot and launched a powerful claw strike in his direction. Chen narrowly dodged the attack, glaring at the creature in frustration and questioning if it thought he was easy prey. Swimming around to face the crab, he immediately assessed that it was far stronger than the mutated ribbonfish he had previously encountered. The crab repeatedly lunged at him with its sharp claws, but he evaded the attacks with ease, using his speed to his advantage. Chen noticed that the force behind the crab's strikes exceeded 10 tons, which he found both alarming and fascinating. With a burst of speed, he dashed toward the crab and slashed through its hard shell with the iguana's sharp claws, killing it instantly. However, he realized that fully absorbing the crab's benefits would take time and decided to let the iguana eat it slowly. While the iguana feasted on the giant crab, Chen opened his laptop to review reports of unusual marine phenomena from recent years. Reflecting on his encounters with the giant ribbonfish, triggerfish, and now the enormous crab, he suspected that the world was undergoing significant changes. One post he read detailed the disappearance of SSN 698, an M-country nuclear submarine, which vanished at a depth of 600 meters in the Pacific after being attacked by an unknown giant sea creature. Another post described a nuclear submarine in the Arctic colliding with an underwater iceberg, resulting in the deaths of all 127 crew members. Chen noted that these incidents had all occurred within the past 2 years, suggesting that the deeper one ventured, the stronger these mysterious creatures became. Checking on the iguana, he saw that the system displayed significant gains. The iguana's evolution points had increased by 290 and 280, boosting Chen's constitution by 29 and 28 points, respectively. The iguana had now grown to an impressive size of 18 meters, and its physical stats had skyrocketed. Its bone structure, muscle strength, and overall physical attributes had reached entirely new levels. Chen tested his strength by punching an iron pole repeatedly. Even after multiple strikes, his hand remained unscathed. Examining his hand, he was pleased to see that there were no scratches, concluding that even a handgun would struggle to do more than scratch his skin. With his natural armor and heightened reaction speed, he surmised that ordinary bullets wouldn't even leave a dent on him.